Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Matt Skelton is 6'3". He's not accustomed, even though he's fought some taller guys, Kevin McBride, for example. But he's not accustomed to fighting guys who are 6'8". with power, right? When you see Skelton in the ring, you'll notice that his hands are low, right? He's able to get away with it because if he's fighting a shorter guy or a guy who's 6'3", they aren't throwing punches from up on high. One of the things that hurts opponents of guys like the Klitschko brothers, or back in the day, Nikolai Valuev, is that they're just unaccustomed to guys throwing straight right hands from the clouds, right? Let me just say, David Price is 6'8". Because Skelton keeps his hands low, in my opinion, David Price is going to have a clear chance to land his straight right hand. And folks, these are heavyweights, they're not lightweights. If Price is able to unload a clean, straight right hand, there might not be enough opportunity for Matt Skelton, who is 45 years old, to recover. And you know my thesis. Older fighters aren't going to allow themselves to get beaten up, especially when they understand that the chances of them winning the fight are slim to begin with. Let's look deeper. Matt Skelton has been KO'd 3 times in his career. In other words, he's already been stopped. This is not an unbeaten fighter who doesn't want to be KO'd. This is not a fighter who may have lost in the past, may have gone the distance with Miguel Cotto, is fighting Ricky Hatton, and doesn't want his corner to throw in the towel like Paulie Malignaggi. Did not want his corner to throw in the towel because he did not want a KO to be part of his record. Skelton's 45. He's been stopped 3 times. If he's in with the young lion and he feels he's being devoured, right, he's not going to stay in the ring to prove style points to anyone. When you're in your 40s, you understand the axiom of living the fight another day. Now let me say something else. It might surprise some people, but the young lion, David Price, has never made it into the 8th round. He is unbeaten. But understand, he has beaten up guys early in fights. Understand the pace of his fights. He's usually landing very hard punches by the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Audley Harrison found out he can do it in the 1st round. Right? Price has never made it to the 8th round. Skelton has never made it to the 8th round since 2009. Right? In other words, 2010, 2011, folks, it's now late November 2012. In none of those years did Skelton make it into the 8th round. The reason I bring all of this up is, incredibly, the over-under on this fight is the midway point of the 8th round. It's 7.5 rounds. Understand what that means. It means a full 7 rounds and then half of the 8th round. This fight between a big slugger, 6'8", who lives off of an overhand right and a left hook, And a 45-year-old guy, 45, who's already been stopped 3 times, in my opinion, shouldn't have an over-under that high, right? The bet I'm recommending in this fight is the under 7.5 rounds. This fight is going to be frenetic. Let me go one step further. And here's where it gets really interesting. Matt Skelton, in my opinion, can fight inside. I have a tape up on my channel page here on YouTube of him fighting Tom Dallas. You're going to see that Skelton is able to put his head right on Dallas's chest. Right? He has his head hovering right here on Tom Dallas. And he, from that position, is still able to throw some awfully hard punches. Right? Figure out the height dynamic. I haven't a clue. After looking at a few tapes, I haven't a clue on whether David Price, who strikes me as an athletic guy who likes to use his feet, can fight inside. I don't know. Let me go one step further. Guys who can fight inside bother tall knockout punchers the most, because the tall knockout puncher is accustomed to extending his arms, right? Knocking you out. Take a look at the Tom Dallas David Price fight. Take a look at the Audley Harrison fight. You're going to see that Price is accustomed to doling out punishment from angles shorter guys just aren't prepared for. Right? Shorter guys don't know how to enter the ring and then have their hands up here, because that's where the punches are coming from. If you're able to put your head down like Matt Skelton is, and you're able to get inside, how do we know that David Price knows how to tie him up? How do we know that David Price will be able to get leverage on his punches with a guy as close to him as Skelton was to Tom Dallas? We don't know. For that additional reason, because Skelton can fight inside, for that additional reason, I think the under 7.5 is warranted. Because again, these are heavyweights. If Skelton gets inside and starts to go to town on David Price, and Price does not have an answer, I don't see how Price will be able to stay upright for the distance, especially when Price is a guy who, quite frankly, hasn't had to develop survival skills since he's been stopping guys before the start of the 8th round. Right? An unbeaten fighter can look awfully ordinary if you unveil a style that he hasn't seen and he has no answers for. So, that brings me to the next point I'm going to make. This one's going to be controversial. Let's get controversial. Sometimes you have to bet on a guy who you don't think is going to win the fight, because the risk reward is so great, and you understand that there is a plausible scenario in which the underdog has a chance to pull the upset. Now, I've just told you that I believe Matt Skelton can fight inside. I don't know whether David Price can. Some tall guys can. I believe Tyson Fury can. I don't know that about David Price. Right? Somehow, the odds makers have made Matt Skelton at least a 14-1 underdog. Let me repeat that. According to the odds makers, if these two guys fought 15 times, they're telling you that Skelton would only win one of the 15. In other words, Price wins 14, Skelton wins 1. That's the 14-1 odds, right? I think that's ridiculous. You know my belief. There's no such thing as a tune-up fight, especially in the heavyweight division, where one punch can decide everything, right? Where, if you look at a guy like Max Skelton's record, you're going to see several knockouts. In fact, both of these guys, several knockouts. It's not far-fetched to believe that either guy could land a bomb and end the show early. So, given the odds, and I understand they're long on the under 7.5, let's say you're getting a minus 300 on the under 7.5, you can still hedge the play. Why? Because you're getting a plus 1,400 on the other side of the hedge, Max Skelton to pull the upset. Right? I personally believe David Price wins the fight. I just believe he does it inside of the halfway point of the 8th round. In other words, inside the 7.5. But I'm going to swing for the fences. I'm going to go for gold on the other side of the bet. And I'm going to hedge it with Skelton to pull the upset. Understand the risk. If Skelton stops David Price inside of 7.5, you win a bounty. You win both sides of the bet, including the side that gives you the 14-1. Right? If Price gets the knockout, as expected, before the midway point of the 8th round, right inside the 7.5, you're covered because you have the under 7.5. But understand the risk. If Price outboxes Skelton, makes it to the 8th round for the first time in his career, and then ends the fight after the halfway point of the 8th round, you lose it all. I think this fight is intriguing. I'm guessing that David Price took this fight to develop his inside game. Let me just say, as longtime viewers know, I think it's a bad move by Price because, again, I believe all of these heavyweights are dangerous, right? I've seen too many fights like Ronaldo Snipes against Larry Holmes back in the day, Mike Weaver against John Tate back in the day, where you had one guy who was supposed to be everything. He goes in the ring. It's supposed to be a tune-up fight. He ends up on his back for at least a portion of the fight. Holmes was able to get off the canvas. He was badly hurt and win the fight, right? John Tate wasn't as lucky. My point is simply, given that Vladimir Klitschko can't fight inside, why is David Price taking this risk instead of fighting for history? Right? Understand, even if you lose to the heavyweight champ, if you put up a spirited battle, we'll be talking about that title defense for years. Also, you do get paid for fighting for the heavyweight championship. And I think fight fans, especially many casual fight fans, just know who you are more when you fight for a title. Right here, I believe Price is in a dangerous match. Price might not be prepared for Skelton's inside game. Let me also say, too, and I mentioned this earlier, if Price just turns over that right hand and starts battering Skelton, I wouldn't be surprised if Matt's corner throws in the towel. Because when you're 45, you're not out there to get your ass kicked. Anyway, to sum up, the straddle I like is the under 7.5. That's the main part. Straddled against Skelton by upset at 14-1 odds, because 14-1 is simply too rich to pass up. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.